Hi, my name is Hana Lee, and I'm here to talk about my favorite movie of the MCU, Thor, and why it should be considered one of the best. Not only does it have women in STEM, a star-studded cast, hilarious comedy in the form of Darcy Lewis, it's also a Shakespearean tragedy. It's directed by Sir Kenneth Branagh, who has long done Shakespearean plays and films, and both Sir Anthony Hopkins and Tom Hiddleston have remarked on the Shakespearean qualities. Tom Hiddleston, in particular, has said that Loki is like Edmund from King Lear, but nastier. And if you look at the plot of Thor, there's a lot in common with the subplot of King Lear. In Lear, you have the Earl of Gloucester, who has two sons: Edgar, his heir to the throne, and Edmund, the scheming bastard son. In the beginning of Thor, we're introduced to Odin telling his two sons that they were born to be kings, but only one is going to be king of Asgard. That one is implied to be Thor, the golden boy who's strong in battle, courageous, very popular. And then you have the quieter son who kind of hides in the shadows, Loki. Loki does magic, which is kind of looked down upon in Asgardian society, or at least not favored compared to, strength in battle. In King Lear, we're introduced to Edmund, who laments the fact that he just happens to be born with the wrong blood, and that has caused him his lower social standing, and he wonders why that is the case. He reflects this new form of thinking that was going on in Shakespeare's times, where men start to question the idea of bloodlines and legitimacy and start kind of fighting for their own place in society through like Machiavellian means and schemes. Likewise, Loki starts plotting to usurp Thor. And in both cases, the younger brother utilizes this threat of violence to the family and the kingdom as a way to kind of cast doubt upon the older brother's abilities to rule and to be a good person. We don't see Edgar ever really fight or do anything hot headed, but the fact that his father believes Edmund's forged letter that suggests that he's planning to overthrow his dad, and the fact that Edmund injures himself and blames it on his brother, shows that maybe Edgar does have something in him that causes the Earl to doubt that his son is ready to be king. On the flip side, in Thor, we see Thor going out and seeking fights and breaking a treaty, and that's what causes him to be cast out and become what Darcy calls a crazy homeless guy. In King Lear, Edgar ends up disguising himself as a madman and living amongst the homeless. And in both cases, the older son has to learn to adopt qualities that are more king like through humble means. On the flip side, you have the younger sons scheming their way into ruling their respective kingdoms. Loki manipulates everything and ends up becoming king of Asgard as Odin has fallen into a deep sleep. Um, Edmund kind of hangs out with King Lear's daughters, woos them. He sees a father figure in the Duke of Albany, but then ends up stabbing him in the back, which is kind of an interesting parallel because Loki discovers that his real father is King Laufey of Jotun and ends up also stabbing Laufey in the back to make himself seem better. And so in both cases, Edmund and Loki scheme their way to the top and show that, this is a new type of ruler who, will do whatever it takes. The ends justify the means. But we see in both cases that the older son returns ready to rule in a fair and just way, but also willing to fight for what is right. And Edgar defeats Edmund in battle, and it causes Edmund to show remorse, whereas Thor kind of defeats Loki, and Loki doesn't really show remorse, but we see a side of vulnerability at the end. And it suggests that, maybe he's not like this evil villain. I like that sense of complexity that we see. But of course, Odin says, no, I don't accept that you did this all to show that you're a good son and a worthy king. And as a result, Loki lets go and drops down into what is presumed to be his death, but later we find out he's just getting ready to be burdened with a new glorious purpose.